Hello, today's project is this amazing Alice in Wonderland themed shrine. I'm going to be using lots of products that are available from the Artful Days store, and I shall link to their store below in the description. It's a really fun project to create, so I'll move this out of the way and I'll get on showing you how I created it. So I'm going to begin by decorating the shrine. This is basically the only bit that I'm using today that isn't from Artful Days store. This was originally from joggles.com. I've had this in my stash for a while. It's one of their masonite shrines. I've assembled the frame part of it. I've glued that together already, and when I've decorated it I can attach that to the back. This one's got like butterfly wings on it. If you don't have this, you know, a simple box you could create from foam board or mount board, or there are plenty of places where you can get hold of little MDF shrines and things in the UK if that's where you are. So I'm going to be covering this with some of the papers, and the papers that I'm using today are these Stamperia Alice 12 by 12 papers, and I want to use this one here that has like a book print design to cover the wings. I've already used a bit of this on another project. There was a figure of Alice there. So what I want to do is decide which bit I want to cover the wings with, and I'm just going to draw around it like so. And I will just cut it there. The other wing, I think I'm going to place up on this area up here. Just draw around that, and again, we'll just cut it there. And I'm probably going to use this section in the back, but I will double check that with the frame over it once I've just cut these bits away. So just having a look. Yep, I quite like the look of that in there. And I'm just going to draw around the outside, but I will cut it, as with the wings, I'm going to cut it slightly smaller so that it fits. So now I've cut that to size, I'm going to glue it on. And this is just, as always, my Cosmic Shimmer acrylic glue. I've put it in a fine tip bottle. If you're interested in getting hold of any of these, there's links in my Amazon storefront in the description below. When this frame goes back in place, it'll hide the edges there. And just in case there's any bit that needs neatening around here, I'm just going to file the edge. Going to be putting a bit of ink around it as well, just to soften the finish. I'm just going to take some pumice stone distress ink and a foam blender and just go around the edges. There's a really nice distressed feel to these papers anyway, and this ink just tones in really well with that. I'm also going to blend a bit of ink around the edge here so that that shows just inside the frame. Now the next thing I want to do is line the outside and inside of this frame before I attach it on here. It's just easier to do it before you glue it in place. And for that I'm going to be cutting some strips of paper, obviously. So I'll just go away and trim these to size, and I'll be right back and we'll pop them on. So these pieces of paper, they're all from the same page, and I'm using the reverse of I'm using both sides basically. I'm going to put the blue pattern on the inside because that blends quite nicely with our background here, and the hearts are going on the outside. So I'm not going to give you the measurements because obviously I've cut these to fit the shrine that I'm using. Whatever you're covering, you know, just measure and cut your papers to fit. This would look really nice sort of done if you've got a box canvas and work this on the reverse inside. Use the canvas back to front to create a little frame. So again, just going to glue all these in place, then file any edges and add a little ink around like we did with the background. So I'll just continue to do this and I'll be back when all that's stuck down. So I've covered the sides inside and out. I've added a little bit of ink around the edge just to blend it in, and I've glued the frame in place on the background. The sort of last part of this main construction is that I'm going to pop this on a slice of wood for a base, just to extend the base out a little bit. So I'm just going to glue that on now, and that can be set aside to dry while we do some painting. While the shrine's set aside to dry, I'm going to get on with painting some embellishments. These lovely resin shapes are also from Artful Days. This is some flamingos and tropical leaves. And I've got some Americana paint here by Deco Art, just acrylic paint. Got poodle skirt pink, razzleberry, sea breeze and green tree. And I'm just going to, you know, paint these up, and they look really nice. They get quite realistic looking. There's quite a bit of detail in there. So I'm going to paint this darker pink on the flamingos first, and then I can brush over the detail of the feather with the paler pink, and that should really highlight the texture. And I'll add the detail of the eye and some black on the beak afterwards once I've got all the pink done. And I'm going to give these leaves a base coat of this green tree paint. Once that base coat's dry, you can go over it, as I say, with almost like a dry brush technique. So I've washed my brush off, dried off any excess. I'm going to take a bit of this pale paint and literally take as much of it off as possible. There's hardly any paint left on my brush. And then I'm going to start lightly brushing over, and it'll just pick up that feather detail. And it really sort of brings it to life, just highlighting those details in the resin. And, you know, looking at the one with the pale colour on, it really just does bring out the amount of detail in there. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to do the same on the leaves as well. And then I'll be back. And I'm just going to use this black Posca paint pen to add some detail onto the beak. You can use a fine paintbrush and some black paint, but this is just a quick way of doing it. So the other thing that I want to add in another embellishment is some of the Scrap Yak chipboards. And I've got a whole load of these from this Alice range. They're really, really nice. Lots of them on the Artful Days site. I want to use this Cheshire Cat out of this set. And I'm undecided. I kind of want to put something in the background. And I'm torn between using this one and this one here. And I think I'm going to go for some of this background here. Now the Cheshire Cat I want to place on the top of my shrine. So I'm going to be backing him onto a piece of card. First of all, I just need to remove him from this sheet. They always have these little notches just attaching them. So you just need to cut those to release them. There's just another one here. And I think a lot of people colour this Cheshire Cat in pink and purple in a very Disney style. I don't want to do that. That won't really go with the colour scheme I've got here. Obviously the papers that we're using have this lovely sort of eggshell blue and this green, the same colours that I've used on these leaves. I know we have the bright pink there, but I'm going to do this in like a turquoise, blue and grey, very much like the Tim Burton Cheshire Cat. I just think that fits my colour scheme a little better. So I'm going to paint this chipboard with the turquoise, and I'm going to back him onto a piece of grey card to fill in the gaps. So we'll set him aside to dry, and then I'm going to cut some of this background just to fit inside. I know we've got the lovely pattern paper, but it's nice to have a bit extra dimension in the back. And, you know, adding another layer in there, it's just more interesting when you look inside. So that looks like it's going to be a nice fit in there. Need to add some colour to this. And again, just going to use the paint pen. I've got the black one, I have got a red one as well. So I'm going to go ahead and colour this in. It's just going to be so much easier than using a paintbrush to do all this detail with all the little shapes being close together. So finished colouring in the background chipboard. I've got myself a piece of grey. It's actually paper rather than card, but it's the colour that I want to put behind this Cheshire Cat. So I'm just going to glue him in place and then trim around the edge with a knife. It's quite a fiddly shape, and I think that's probably going to be the easiest way for me to do it. So just going to let that dry for a few minutes, and then we can trim around that. I feel I want to just dull this down a little bit. It's quite bright, so I just want to take some of the pumice stone distress ink again and just knock back that red a little bit. Just carefully, because they're quite fragile, these chipboards. I'll do the same with the Cheshire Cat once he's cut out and finished. But while he's drying, I'll sort of clear myself some space here. I can glue this in place. As you see, it doesn't need glue all over it, but just in sort of strategic points that are going to hold it down. And just drop that in. And press that down. And that's just, that adds, you know, a splash of colour in the background, a bit more dimension, more interest, another layer to go behind our focal points, which will be these resin shapes. I also want to pop in something to decorate the base, and again from Artful Days I've got some moss here, different coloured moss. I've got some like little miniature toadstools, and I'm just going to sort of set the scene with these. Again, I'm just waiting for the Cheshire Cat, which I'm just going to move out of the way. We're waiting for him to dry. He's going to go on the top. I'm going to use some of this fabulous red moss and some of the green moss, and I've got a little of this white as well. And this I'm going to be gluing in place with a little gel medium, just using a palette knife to spread that. Find the moss easier to work with if I just break it apart into smaller pieces to start with. And just put a generous layer of the gel medium down. And then you can begin to pop in place some of this moss. And that's just our little base put in. Also want to add a little bit of coloured sand at the front. So again, a little bit of gel medium. And here I've got some red and black decorative sand. Again, this sand is from Artful Days. So just sprinkle it on, pat it in place. You can always add a little dusting over the top of the moss. Just going to set that to dry. Now I've cut out my Cheshire Cat. I've applied a little bit of Distress ink around the edge just to darken it down. And I want him to be perched on the top of this shrine up here. So to attach him, this is a couple of pieces of foam board that I've just cut them out and glued them together. And I'm going to stick this behind him so that I can just sort of glue it on the top there. And I've got my hot glue gun just because this is going to be a bit quicker and stronger. So I'm just going to attach that in the centre, just set back ever so slightly from the edge there so that the Cheshire Cat's going to be perched on there. Some glue on there, just hold him for a second till the glue catches him. Pull off any little stringy bits that you get. So he's topping off our little shrine. I've got the little toadstools. These come with a wire on the bottom. I don't want the wire, so just going to cut that off with the wire cutters. And then I'm going to glue gun those in place. So I just want to prop this up so it's easier for you to see what I'm doing. Put it like that. Hopefully it's not going to slide. Glue our little toadstools in place. Next I want to put in our flamingos. And these are going to be attached, I think, to the background. I don't know that I can get them. Actually, I may be able to get them standing up. Bit of glue on his tail and his feet, and hopefully we can attach him to the side as well as the bottom. And I think I'm going to pop some of these leaves behind this other one. If I can attach this other flamingo to the front here. I'm going to put a couple of the leaves behind where he'll be. And finally, I want to use these words that are on this piece of paper. Yeah, I think trying to decide, do I want them inside or out? And I think I want them inside. I know they would look nice on the wings, but I just want to keep the wings quite simple. Just pop those in there. And I think the last thing was this sheet of paper with the playing cards on. I've cut some of these apart, and I'm thinking I might just add a couple on the side. Just to finish off framing the actual scene that we've created. So just inking. I know they've got quite a distressed effect anyway, but I'm just going to ink around the edge. These are really nice actually, because the back side of the paper has the back of the cards printed on. So, you know, if you're viewing this from behind, or if you want to use them in other ways, they are literally like miniature playing cards. And that's finished. Now, I'll just move that out of the way. And there we have our finished little Wonderland scene. Lots of detail in the bottom there. I mean, there's some amazing textures on the Artful Days site. You know, you could go mad. There's little pearl balls and different little chippings and things like that, bits of shell. They'd all look great in there. But this is just, you know, another way to use these beautiful papers. I know a lot of people don't like to cut up these pads of papers, but you know, they are too nice to just leave them sitting in a drawer. So use them. And they work so well with these chipboards, with these resin shapes. And I'm really, really pleased with my little Wonderland scene that I've created there. So as always, you know, if you enjoyed this video, please leave me a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more from me. And I'll be back again with another video soon. Bye.